This is Maurice Jones-Drew, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show.
You're listening to the What's Bruin Show, part of the What's Bruin Show network, with your hosts, Jake Berryfield and Mike Regalado, and occasionally some friends, talking all things UCLA sports. And now, it's time for the What's Bruin Show. And welcome to What's Bruin, a show about anything and everything Bruin sports. I'm your host, Mike Regalado, and tonight I am going solo because Mr. Jake is on location in the Valley. So I will be doing all the talking tonight. Before we get into what's new in UCLA and college news, hit us up on the Twitters, Instagrams, and threads at What's Bruin Show. You can email us at whatsbruinshow@gmail.com. We're also at whatsbruin.substack.com and Patreon/whatsbruinshow, or just whatsbruinshow.com. All right. You can also check us out on the YouTubes. Just search for What's Bruin Show, and you can get your What's Bruin Show Network merch at mylocker.net/shop/what's-bruin. You can also call the WBN hotline, 805-399-4WBS. Second Detroit. Yeah, so I am solo today, and but we still have some stuff to talk about. It's pretty much dead. News is pretty much dead in relation to men's and women's basketball, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about recruiting, which has been pretty damn good for the football team. But I'm also going to have a guest on, Mr. Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football. He always does a good job of analyzing and breaking down off the field and off the court issues. And with that, we are going to talk about the new revenue share settlement that has come down and what it means for the NCAA and college programs across the country, as well as the individual players. And of course, I also have to talk about the UCLA baseball team making it back to the College World Series, but we'll do that in a second. Right now, let's talk about how Deshaun Foster is killing it in recruiting. He had a very busy weekend, hosted several official visitors, had a camp for 7-on-7s, and there was a lot of activity. But yeah, let's quickly talk about how Deshaun Foster is killing it. These commitments have really boosted UCLA for the 26 and 27 recruiting cycles. Right now, UCLA has 14 commits to 2026 and is number 14 in the country. 2027 only have 2 commits, but already number 10 in the country. And obviously that's going to change. That's going to fluctuate with the talent that they are able to bring in. Maybe players decommit. Who knows what happens before they actually step onto campus. But that is what's going on right now, and it's pretty amazing. Basically, in the last 5 days, UCLA has just snagged, some really good, top quality talent, and that event at UCLA over the weekend really helped. There were actually 2 commitments today. One of them is a late addition to the 2025 recruiting class. A late addition, but one that UCLA will take on. Defensive lineman Robert James III, a 3-star lineman out of Sarah High School, and definitely going to be a big help for UCLA on the interior, as UCLA has lost some pretty good talent over the last 2 seasons. So bringing in one extra for this coming season is definitely going to help out the depth on the interior line. And I believe he enrolls in UCLA next month, so he will be in by fall. If he's used, we'll see. We'll see how thin UCLA is on the line truly when they start going against some of those big old offensive lines in the Big Ten. Anyway, but that was the second. That was the first of two commitments on Tuesday. The other one was from safety Logan Hero, 3-star, number 15 safety in the nation, out of Santa Margarita, and he was the fifth player over the last several days to commit from the 2026 season. UCLA also flipped North Carolina commit cornerback Justin Lewis, 3-star, number 90 cornerback in the nation. This kid looks very very agile and could grow into a very special player. But yeah, that was pretty impressive that they were able to get him. Kid from Rancho Cucamonga, keep him home. So bravo to Deshaun Foster's staff. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. UCLA got the highest rated player in the Deshaun Foster tenure. Offensive tackle Johnny Jones, 4-star, number 12 offensive tackle in the nation. This kid is from Tampa. They pulled a commit out of Florida. Very, very fantastic. He committed on his official visit over the weekend. And, he's the highest rated offensive, not just offensive lineman, but highest rated player in the Deshaun Foster era with a rating of 91 out of 100. And that's crazy because I'm going to get into this commit soon. But UCLA already had the highest rated offensive lineman commit to the Bruins just a few days before that. But before I get into that, we had linebacker Ramzak Ferran. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. 3-star, number 36 cornerback in the nation, number 3 overall player in the state of Washington. He was a kid that played some defensive back and kind of grew into a linebacker's body. And so he has a lot of agility and should be very a versatile player for the Bruins. And from what I read on Bro, UCLA wants him as an outside linebacker. So that's UCLA really going after the edges on that one. So we'll see what he develops into. UCLA just getting 4-stars. Inside offensive lineman Micah Smith. He was the one actually that was rated 90. I think he committed on Sunday, I believe it was. At that point he was the highest rated offensive lineman for UCLA under Deshaun Foster. And that's 2 4-star quality offensive linemen that UCLA has been able to bring into the program. Quan, the offensive line coach, he's killing it, isn't he? That's really, really good to see, and especially with the positive notes that we got out of spring practice that the offensive line has definitely improved over those 4 weeks. UCLA also got another commitment, their first commitment for the 2027 recruiting cycle. Royalton Allen, 3-star from Hesperia. He committed during the 7-on-7s over the weekend. He's the first player to commit to the Bruins for 2027, and will likely be playing defensive back. So it's another coach that's really getting on it. Demetrius Martin getting the first 2027 commit. So the Bruins are doing something special. There's definitely a fire that has been ignited under this recruiting scheme. As we didn't really see this last year, and I think that's because of the late hire. Getting into the late recruiting cycle, getting into hiring a coaching staff very late. So the fact that Deshaun Foster now has his guys, his coaching staff that he wants, kind of younger, more energetic. We're seeing that in the efforts on the road. So that's pretty freaking fantastic for them. Obviously, we're gonna keep an eye on it. Gonna try to dive into recruiting a little bit more, especially if there's not much to talk about during the off season. But we're gonna still bring you quality content here on the What's Bruin show. All right, quickly on to baseball as the Bruins, ladies and gentlemen, 12 years since the last time they were in the College World Series, return to Omaha as they come out of the Super Regional with a 2-0 series win over Texas San Antonio, who previously beat number 2 Texas in the week before in the Austin Regionals. And it was a pretty convincing, pretty decisive weekend for the Bruins in the Super Regional. On Saturday's game, UCLA kind of started things off with a bit of a scare, giving up 2 runs in the, I believe it was the first, second innings to UTSA. In the third inning, the Bruins came alive with 2 runs. They had 4 hits, 2 runs in that inning. 1 inning later, they tacked on another one to get the lead, 3-2 lead. And in the bottom of the 8th, the Bruins brought in 2 more to get the 5-2 win. Got some breathing room. So Bruins just needed 1 more. Nothing big, just a win. The Bruins destroyed Texas San Antonio 7-0. They had scored in the 4th and 5th innings to take a 2-0 lead. And then it was in the 8th and the 9th when they just bombed the hell out of UTSA and won, added 5 more runs. But by the time the bottom of the 8th inning came alive. And yeah, they are in the College World Series for the first time in 12 years. And John Savage, man, that guy can really do some things. After 2 super underwhelming seasons prior to this, he has the Bruins not just as the number 15 seed in the tournament, but they're now playing for the College World Series. So let us take a look at what's happening with those guys. As it is, UCLA is in the bracket 2. In bracket 1, you have number 8 Oregon State. Go Beavs. They had a very thrilling win, I believe it was on Monday, to get to the College World Series. We also have number 13 Coastal Carolina. Arizona joins the fracas. 3 former Pac-12 teams are in this, as well as Louisville. They're in bracket 1. Bracket 2, we have number 3 Arkansas, number 6 LSU. So that's going to be a tough route if UCLA has to run into those two against in the later rounds, because the Bruins start off with Murray State, which that's good because that means that number 3 Arkansas and number 6 LSU will play each other in the other part of the in the lower part of the bracket 2. So that's a break for the Bruins. They get started on June 14th, which is, if I look at my calendar, didn't write this down. Good job, Mike. It is the Saturday at 11 a.m. That one, is that going to be on ESPN's? I don't know. It doesn't say right here. But, search UCLA Bruins, College World Series. If UCLA wins, they will play 2 days later. One of the good things about this bracket is that it's double elimination, so you have 2 losses before you're completely kicked out. And if you win, you get a day of rest in between. So UCLA could easily, not easily, Murray State's actually a pretty damn good team. And I would not be surprised if they pulled off an upset against UCLA. But this seems like UCLA has just been in control lately, so a win should come their way. And then they would play the winner of the Arkansas-LSU game. The losers of those first round games go into the elimination bracket, and that's where they try to claw their way back in and try to survive with 1 loss already while everyone still has 0 losses. Anyway, it's a whole thing, and I absolutely love the College World Series brackets because, like several basketball tournament brackets, it's just absolutely insane. You need a degree in engineering and architecture and statistics to truly understand it. But no, it actually is really fun seeing how all of these teams can be matched up against each other. But yeah, that's all I got for both football and baseball. So now, let us bring on our guest. And welcoming to the show is Tony Siracusa, the managing editor of Last Word on College Football. And if you know that name, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he's a former beat reporter for the UCLA football, but has moved across the country and now covers Wake Forest football. But I brought him on today because he not only soaks up all of this information, this non-football information, like a sponge, but he's so poignant and detailed in how he describes it on his site. So I wanted to talk about it with someone instead of Jake and I rambling. I'm going to have an expert clear things up for you, break it down, have you understand exactly what is going on with this. So Tony, thank you for joining us here from the East Coast.
Brother Mike, always glad to do it, pal. I miss you. I miss hanging out at UCLA with you.
I know, right? Had so many things to talk about. Ted Lasso 4. We're not going to be able to talk about that.
I know. There are things that are missed now that I'm living out in Charlotte, North Carolina, and covering the ACC and Wake Forest. And as you point out, now spending a lot of time covering court cases. I mean, we covered all of the lawsuits with the ACC and Florida State and Clemson to the point where we were actually in those cities, in those courtrooms for all the lawsuits. And, you know, I guess my journalism major in school was fine, but it turns out being a constitutional law minor has proven to be useful these days.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Last week, I believe it was on Friday, the House settlement permitted the NCAA programs, if you will, schools to share revenue with their students, and I believe that starts on July 1st. But there are whole things about annual caps, roster caps. Let's just get into it really quickly. In your opinion, what does this settlement mean for the NCAA?
It's for the NCAA, it's going to actually push them aside in terms of their authority to manage this going forward. One of the things that we're all going to want to learn to get accustomed to is the new organization, the College Sports Commission. This part of the lawsuit settlement in this, and it's worth noting real quick, this case lasted 5 years. This was filed, Matt House was a swimmer, Arizona State, and this was filed in June of 2020, that he wanted, now that NIL was allowed, that people who weren't getting it before the Ed O'Bannon case deserve some of this. And that's what prompted all of this. And it turned into a class action antitrust lawsuit against the NCAA, the conferences, and the schools. The College Sports Commission comes out of this, and this is signed off on by Judge Claudia Wilkin, who is the presiding judge in the case. Quick side note on her. She was the presiding judge in the O'Bannon versus NCAA case and the presiding judge in the Alston versus NCAA case. So she knows her way around the subject matter very well. And the College Sports Commission is going to be in charge of basically patrolling how this all works. It is going to be monitoring infractions by the schools or the conferences, or even the athletes themselves. The NCAA won't be a part of this. The NCAA was basically acting in violation of federal antitrust laws for the last 50 years and getting away with it. The NCAA will still have a role in enforcing things like eligibility, and they'll still manage the postseason tournaments in basketball and baseball and whatnot. But they won't be taking a part in this at all. So as you point out, the ruling came in my part of the world on the East Coast. It came out late Friday night. Judge Wilkin issued it about 7:30 from her courtroom in Oakland. I had just come home. My wife and I had just come home from seeing the Savannah Bananas at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. And I'm looking at my phone going, wow, still no ruling from her. I'm going to go to bed. And then about 10 minutes later, I get the news alert that it was coming. So I got out of bed and sat up. It was a 76-page ruling, which is kind of short for her. Her O'Bannon ruling was more than 100 pages long. And read through it, highlighted, stayed up all night making my notes, wound up falling asleep at some point in the wee hours of the morning with my laptop on my lap, writing the article. But here's the top lines of it is all schools now are going to be able to pay athletes directly. They will have a cap in year one of $20.3 million. That will escalate over the course of time, but for at least the first 2 years, actually, it's going to be $20.3 million. How the schools spend that is 100% up to them. They can spend it all on football and leave everybody else out of it if they want. I don't think anyone's going to do that, but they can. It is up to the individual schools. A lot of the administrators that I've talked to are looking at this in a proportionate view. If the football program brings in 70% of the revenue for the athletic department, the football program is going to get 70% of that $20.3 million. Basketball, women's basketball, however it breaks down. Because this is the school's money. This isn't new money that the schools are getting. This is basically coming out of their conference TV revenue money, the money that they get as a postseason share, things like that. That's where the money is coming from. Donors can contribute to the school, and the school can use that towards this revenue. So it's going to work out differently for different schools based on how they're doing. Right? UCLA is getting roughly $70 million per year from the Big Ten, but UCLA is also, the athletic department is also in a deficit. So, and Martin Jarman is committed to spending the full $20.3 million. So they're going to look for some help from some other places. And because this is separate from NIL and it is separate from the collectives. Part of the goal of this, and I think this is really important for everyone to know, this is intended to push the collectives to the side, minimize their impact. Judge Wilkin called them disassociated third parties when she referred to the collectives in here. There is talk that some of the collectives will sue because they're being pushed aside. Judge Wilkin made it clear in her ruling, to this point, as we sit here in this day and time, there is no case that has ever been adjudicated that shows that the collectives have a right to exist or to be a part of an athletic department. So, and the coaches don't really like having to work with the collectives because they're the boosters who have demands. So this is about the school paying the athletes. It's about the athletes still being able to get NIL money. The NIL money is going to be monitored by Deloitte. And I'm sure everybody remembers when they were Deloitte and Touche, famous auditing firm. They're going to be monitoring these contracts to make sure no one is getting anything too out of whack. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. I'm not sure how they're going to determine what fair market value is in Ames, Iowa versus Los Angeles, and what these players could and should be getting. But the good news is that in theory, at least, NIL is going to be real NIL. It is going to be that for which Ed O'Bannon fought for all those years. And that is a direct relationship from a sponsor to an athlete. Right? A local car dealer in Tuscaloosa wants the starting quarterback in their commercials. and they're going to pay that person with some money to do the commercials or do some autograph signings. Maybe they even give them a car, whatever the case may be. But there's that direct relationship that was supposed to exist, which the collectives corrupted. And so you'll have that, and you'll have the schools paying money to its athletes however they deem appropriate.
You did bring up the issue of market value. What do you think we can see in terms of how, like you said, you compared UCLA to Ames, Iowa, but on an individual basis, what does it mean for the individual player? Maybe someone who's like, closer to home, Nico Iamaleava or, Lauren Betts on the women's team, as opposed to, the sixth person off the bench or, a backup cornerback. How is that going to work? Also, we haven't touched upon the fact that this is going to limit rosters. How is that going to work?
Yes. To your first question, it's a great question. I don't think we know yet. I think that because Deloitte is going to be observing, looking, advising, they will not play a role in saying, yes, you can have this, no, you can't. They're going to be setting a standard, and I don't think we know how that standard sits right now. There's a dollar figure that keeps getting thrown around that anything above $600 is going to get observed from Deloitte or by Deloitte. But now there are some contingencies to that, we'll call it. Public companies are not going to be subject to that discretionary look from Deloitte. So let's say Coca-Cola wants to sign Lauren Betts, and Coca-Cola can do whatever they want, and Deloitte will sit there and look at the paperwork, but it's going to go through. Because public companies have to live under public financial laws anyway, so they're not going to get too out of whack on this. But there's a question, and I've asked several attorneys, and no one's been able to answer it yet, other than, I don't know. Let's say that a local Chevrolet dealership somewhere on the west side wants to sign Lauren Betts, right? But it's a local dealership. Okay, fair enough. That person owns the dealership, but that person also pays fees to Chevrolet, to the company. So is that in any way a public company, even though he's the owner? I don't know, and no attorney I've spoken with knows either. So I think, look, I don't think Deloitte is going to black flag or red flag, I guess, anything early on, because I don't think they want the fights. I think it's going to be about setting the standard, looking at the models going forward. I think there's going to be a lot of room and a lot of flexibility. I think Nico is going to make whatever Nico's going to make in his NIL deals, and that's going to be fine. The roster. So I talked so long, I almost forgot what your second question was. The rosters are going to be limited. However, there was a very late change in this process. The scholarship numbers will be what they are. Football is going to be 105. Basketball will be, I think they have it set at 15. But what was happening is schools were cutting down on their rosters to get down to a financially viable size by cutting out walk-ons. Now, of course, walk-ons aren't pulling scholarship money, but there's still a cost to having them. They're still part of the operation. They're still getting the trainers, and in a lot of cases, the meals and the housing and things like this. And schools started cutting already before this decision even got there. Most football programs are somewhere around 120 players, but 105 are the scholarship players. Well, Judge Wilkin several weeks ago said she was not okay with that process, that you can't just cut someone now who's expecting to be there in the fall. We're talking specifically football in terms of that calendar. And she told the NCAA and the conferences to come back with a plan about how to put those players back in. So what wound up happening in her ruling is any player who has had a commitment from a school to be a walk-on, to be a part of that program in that capacity, is guaranteed their spot through the end of their NCAA eligibility. So if you're a freshman and you just finished your first year as a walk-on, and you're planning on, you had been told you would be back next year, you will be back. They're going to grandfather in all of these players in all of the sports where it's pertinent, and it will phase out over years as their eligibility comes out, then and there won't be more walk-ons added in to replace them. So it'll phase out on its own over the next 4 to 5 years.
You talked about how this will kind of I forget your exact words, not push aside collectives that are already in place, but what will be the impact of some collectives, especially with bigger schools, now that first off, will this be a relief for some of the collectives? Is that a good thing? And obviously the schools are going to pay them. What's the outlook between going between this new setup and what has already been established? And for some programs, only 1 or 2 years, 1 or 2 or 3 years. Some of these schools, when NIL hit big time a few years ago, they were on top of it. But how are they going to work together? That's basically my question.
It's going to be up to each school how they work with the collectives, but the large scale payments of collectives dominating at the University of Texas, for instance, there's a rumor out there, and I will tell you that it is complete garbage, that Texas has a $40 million football roster. It's hogwash. There's absolutely no evidence that is true. Now, are they going to have a big football roster? Yes. Will the collectives make up the majority of that money? No, they will not, because the role of unattributable third parties is minimized in this. So here's what when I've talked to a lot of administrators in the South and in my part of the country, here's what a lot of the programs want to do. The collectives, you asked if it's a relief for the collectives. No, because the boosters want to be involved, and money is their way to be involved. Money is how they get a say in what happens. Mm-hmm. But the football team, for instance, is going to be taken care of. It's going to be fine. They're going to get their revenue sharing. They're going to get their NIL money. And there's a way to connect the collectives to the NIL still, which, there's no way to close some of these loopholes. But what they want to use the collectives for is to go take care of the other sports. In other words, the non-revenue sports are quite likely to get the short shrift in this, because they're not bringing money to the table. They're not going to get a lot of the revenue sharing. They'll get some, but not that much. Look, if you're taking 70% for the football team, or if you're taking, we'll say, my math was always really bad. Let's just say football is going to get $15 million. That leaves you $5 million to cover everything else, right? They would like, and I know a lot of schools are setting this up, they would like the collectives to be the fundraisers for those other programs. Because then they're not having to be indebted to the concept of the collective getting them $20 million. We only need $7 to $8 million for track and field, gymnastics, whatever else, women's soccer, whatever the case may be, whatever the financial priorities are. So they are not so beholden to the collectives if the money being pulled in from the collectives is a lot less than what it was. Now, look, this is not a perfect solution. It is not even close to a perfect solution, but it is far better than what we were facing, because Judge Wilkin made it clear that if this settlement didn't pass muster, there was no second chance or third chance. They were going to be coming back in June to set trial dates. The NCAA would have lost. The trial would have taken another 2 to 3 years. The NCAA would have lost because I don't think there's much question that they were violating antitrust laws. But in that 2 to 3 years, I got to tell you, most people I've talked to said the weight of what was happening would collapse college sports. It was becoming untenable to keep this collective race going, with some competing and some not. And it was going to be far too much of a struggle. Like I said, are there imperfections in this? Absolutely. There are a lot of questions about Title IX. And if you're not paying the women's sports a significant amount of money, is that a Title IX violation? Those questions got brought up during the trial. I mean, we were, or during the hearings, we were streaming this. I mean, I didn't go out to Oakland for it, but we were streaming all of the hearings in her courtroom. And it got brought up, and she addressed it in her ruling. She said, there may be Title IX violations, but I'm not going to address them because they haven't happened yet. You have to wait until there is an injured party to be able to address any potential litigation. In other words, you have to wait till there is a Title IX violation until you can address that violation. And she reminded all the court watchers that Title IX does not guarantee equal results. It guarantees equal opportunity. So do you have the opportunity to make this money, to get NIL deals, to get revenue sharing that is commensurate with your performance, how many games you play per season, things like that, because it doesn't guarantee an equal result. I look at the calendar and I realize, women's soccer is a fall sport, women's volleyball is a fall sport. So you can pretty much figure by March there will be a Title IX lawsuit from somebody, and it'll sit in the courts for 2 to 3 years before we see anything from it.
It's weird. I just saw rewatched Minority Report, and you just kind of like brought that up. It's like, it's like pre-crime. It's like, we can't exactly punish you because it didn't work. On a tangent here, but in the movie, the reason that they scrapped it in the end was because there were faults to it. And you kind of like, right. It was, I don't know why I just went to that, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You kind of have to wait to see exactly what happens. But yeah, it's also good.
You have to wait for it to actually happen. You can't presume what's going to go wrong. And look, you're a bright guy who follows this stuff inside and out every day. You've been one of the biggest advocates for UCLA women's athletics that I can possibly think of, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
So you know the reality of this, but you can't go into it ahead of time expecting a judge to have anything to do with any of it. So there are flaws in this. They're going to get hashed out over time. I think one of the critical things to know about this is, well, a couple of things. One, with regards to the College Sports Commission, again, this ruling came down 7:30 or so West Coast time. There is now a CEO already. He was named not Friday night. Brian Seeley, who is up until Friday night, was the Major League Baseball executive vice president for legal operations.
Yeah.
So he's coming in already knowing the negotiating issues, the contractual issues, because this is what he does. He's a high-priced attorney, and he is going to be the CEO of the College Sports Commission. The other important thing to know is that there is a term for this settlement, 10 years. This settlement is good and valid for 10 years. So what happens in 10 years? Wow. I think you and I both know college sports is going to evolve and revolve about another 2 to 3 times in that 10 years. The TV contracts for the Big Ten and the SEC will be renewed at much higher levels between now and then. 10 years, so it's 2025. The ACC will dissolve by the time this is up in 10 years, because those lawsuits from Clemson and Florida State, while Commissioner Jim Phillips was satisfied that he won because it held the conference together for now, it opened the door for them. The grant of rights, which was to be held through 2030, basically got put in the shredder. The document that everybody out here was convinced was like Moses bringing the tablets down from the mountainside, went in the shredder, because by 2030, schools can leave with their broadcast rights in their back pocket. And so they will leave. And the ACC, as it sits today, will be gone by 2030. So a lot of changes, a lot is going to happen. And then there's the part that everybody has been waving off, everybody except me, has been waving off for years, and that is the United States Congress. There will be involvement. I know we cringe because just the idea of what Congress could be thinking of.
Yeah.
But there will be, and for years people said, Congress doesn't want any part of this. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. We have talked to senior staff, some congressmen, and one particular senator. And look, what they're looking for is a way to nationalize the system so that it is one system across the entire country. Because you've probably heard that there are a couple of states that are already putting out their own legislation, like Tennessee did, which says our schools don't have to follow this lawsuit settlement. They can do whatever they want within, if they are in our state. Well, let me tell you, from a legal standpoint, I play one a lot on interviews. Tell you that's a pile of garbage, because these schools, every conference that went into this, which is mostly the Power Four conferences, they got unanimous approval from the schools within their conference. So Tennessee and Vanderbilt voted to approve the settlement, which makes them de facto signatories to the settlement. If you now violate it because you're in the state of Tennessee and you want to follow the Tennessee state legislature, you are in violation of the agreement, and there will be severe financial penalties. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is talking about things like, if you violate this, we're throwing you out of the conference. That's pretty significant. That's a $75 million loss for Tennessee and for Vanderbilt, just for going and following a bunch of state legislators who want to be heard. So there's going to be some things that get brought up with the United States Congress. There are some bills looking to nationalize the system. The likely way to do this, very limited, they will have very limited immunity and antitrust exemption abilities, both for the NCAA and the College Sports Commission, which, we know every time the NCAA tries to do something, they get sued in federal court the next day and they lose. This would empower them to enforce the rules and enforce the changes and things like that. That's the most likely thing that we're going to see. There are some pieces of legislation, bipartisan, that are already being drawn up, and they basically know they've got 6 to 7 years to pull it together and get it done before the term on this in 10 years runs out.
Well, that's why I had him on the show. I asked him for 10 minutes. He gave me nearly 30. He's the managing editor.
I'm sorry.
No, it's brilliant.
I talk too much.
It's exactly what I wanted. But yes, this is Tony Siracusa with last word on college football. Thank you so much for joining me and on this episode and talking about just going in depth for those who aren't exactly sure what was going on. You broke it down really well. So thank you for coming on.
Always glad to do it, Mike.
Well, happy Tuesday. I'm going to talk about some baseball and some College
Sorry.
World Series.
Sorry, I did go on so long. I wasn't looking at the clock.
Oh no, it was perfect. It was perfect. You told me that you had some time constraints, but you got freed up. So this is perfect. Tony Siracusa, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the What's Bruin Show.
All right, pal. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason that I brought him onto the show, because he laid that out clearly and concisely, and he's always a blast to talk with. I definitely miss him on the UCLA beat, but yeah, now he's on the East Coast covering East Coast teams. So that is all for me. Longer episode than I expected, but that's a good thing. So we will be back next week. Jake will be back, and we will talk about all things basketball. We're going to get into a little bit of that secret show.
Good evening.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
That was the What's Bruin Show.
Oh my God.
Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's gotta be in or out, Mom. In or out. Well, I need the door closed.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Dude, Rob, we play some ball on the West Coast.
The final word is boob.